What's going on, guys? All right, so we're going to get right into it. This is the F1 Snack Zone, and today we're going to talk about the Ferrari SF24. They just released their car, both in like a model form, and they also drove it around and did a few test runs with it. But today we're just going to kind of go over some of the differences between last year's model and this year's model. So, real quick, up top, we have last year's model. Immediately, you can start to see some of the differences between the two. Up top, you could see the side pods, which is probably the most notable change from last year. It's just a completely different design. A lot of the other teams are kind of going with the more kind of like a how do you call it? Basically, like a water slide type of an approach with their side pods. So, all of the other teams are kind of going with something similar to this. And yeah, I guess it's kind of the way to go. So, I know that last year there were some issues with regards to the confidence whenever the Ferrari drivers were driving at the higher speeds, and so I'm guessing this might make them feel a bit more comfortable, along with some of the other changes that you could see right off the bat. So, just real quick, in terms of suspension, it's essentially the same as last year. As you can see here, we have push rod on the front, pull rod in the back. This is essentially kind of like the opposite of what Red Bull is running, but honestly, Ferrari has, doesn't really have much of a reason to make changes there. They seem pretty confident in what they had last year, so no changes. Also, up top, you can see the top of the engine cover. It's basically the same size as last year, whereas Haas, it seems like they stuck with kind of a larger entryway for the engine cover there, probably to help with some of the airflow. And then you can kind of see a bit more of a underbite inlet to the side pod in the front of it here. That's kind of more of what Red Bull was doing. And yeah, that just kind of gives them a quicker opportunity to control the airflow that's going to hit that and then come down up above the floor. So those are some of the changes there. And then kind of looking at the actual front of the wing. A few differences here. So we have last year's car on the left and this year's car on the right. You can see the right. It's fairly similar. Just they made it the nose a bit thicker, and that just helps separate the air from the left side and the right side. So I guess they kind of want a little bit more control there. But just overall, pretty similar, and it's just a little bit flatter up on the top. So seems like whatever they're doing is maybe a little bit more subtle with the front wing. And then obviously you can kind of see also the differences between the front of the side pods. So this year, it seems a little bit more narrow overall, but the actual inlet seems to be kind of about the same size. So, yeah, I mean those are the differences kind of when from a front view, and then if you're looking at the top, you can see that the changes are a bit more noticeable. So the actual side pods have a little bit more of a V shape, as you can see here. So the bottom one is this year's, and the top one is last year's. And then also what really stands out is you could see here on this top view, the engine cover is just dramatically different. They really have these kind of I think they kind of call them like rocket side rocket side pods, or I don't know what they call them these days, but yeah, they basically moved some of those gill-like vents off of the side pods and put them higher up, and then also like the engine cover is just bigger overall, so they're able to kind of probably change some of the weight distribution from taking away that from the side pods and kind of pushing it more into the engine cover. And I'm guessing that kind of gives them some more airflow through that. So, yeah, overall, you can kind of tell some of the differences there, and it's pretty different, to be honest. And then moving on to a little bit more of a side view of the actual cars. You can see last year the airflow kind of looks a bit more different. The top of the side pod, instead of kind of going up, down, and back up, it's kind of going more just over it and then kind of funneling back down towards the bottom of the car. Again, this is kind of what a lot of the cars are doing now. And so Ferrari, I guess, in their simulators and tests, feel like that's the best way to go for this year. So they're going to give that a shot. And then the bottom of the floor, you can see that shape is a bit different. There's going to be a lot more airflow coming up the top of the bottom of the floor. And yeah, I think that's probably going to make their car feel a bit better at all speeds and probably just more efficient. So, and then moving on over to the back, again, you can kind of see the differences in the actual engine covers from last year to this year. It is just dramatically different. It's just a much bigger engine cover towards the back. And again, you can kind of see the actual vents are shifted a bit more up. And so, yeah, I mean, probably the standard configuration of the car is going to have probably less of the vents now that there's a bit more airflow coming up through that engine cover. So, and then one last thing, it's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but at the back of the car, at the back of the wing here, you can see this side skirt area. It kind of protrudes out a bit further than last year. Again, like I said, it's a bit hard to see on this one, and it might even be hard to see on some of the other pictures, but at least from the top view, it looks like that area is actually poking out a bit more than last year. So again, a little bit hard to tell, but that might be a difference worth noting. And then also you can kind of see it here. This year, they actually have um, a little bit of a different design in terms of their halo. So up on the top here, you can see that there's almost like a section here where the airflow can kind of come in and out of. I don't really know how much of an advantage that really gives the car in terms of maybe efficiency or I really don't know what that is really doing, but that is something that is new with this car that you don't really see on any of the other cars. I mean, even if you're looking at last year's car, that is just not really even there, except they sort of have something like that up higher up, but it seems to be a smaller design. And they also kind of had something going on the lower section here last year, but it seems like they kind of they did away with all of that and kind of simplified it into one sort of a design here. So we'll see if, if other teams looking at that after the fact can tell a difference between, whether or not that's worth adding to their car and how that affects the performance of it. So, yeah, just overall, this car is, I would say, substantially different from last year, but I guess we're not surprised. They did give everyone a bit of a heads up in terms of their thoughts on this year's car and how much it was going to change. I think they're going to be a contender for Red Bull, quite competitive. Leclerc seems to do really, really well in qualifying. I think if they just have better luck during the races, they're going to be up there this year. So we'll see. I'm excited to see how the beginning of the season starts off. I know last year, the first race, I believe Leclerc was a DNF. So as long as they're off to a good start, I think it's going to be a good year for them. So, anyways, this is basically my thoughts on this year's car. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, this is a new channel, so please like, subscribe, give me a comment, let me know what you think about this year's car for Ferrari. Do you like the livery? Do you think that this car is going to be any better than last year? Let me know what you think. So anyways, I'll catch you guys later.